I'll be working on sections or topic 7. And I just wanted to point out before we get into the information that the same with the last chapter, there's a couple videos that I would like you to watch with these as well. So after you watch my videos going through the slides and you review the slides and watch these 3 videos, they add a lot of extra information that will help enhance the information from the slides. So for the first section, we are talking about resolving personal conflict. So in any relationship we have, there's naturally going to be some conflict. Conflict is defined as the expressed struggle between at least 2 people who perceive the situation differently and are experiencing interference from the other person in achieving their goals. So the reason that we so often get frustrated in conflict situations is because we have in our mind the way things should be in whatever the situation is. And when somebody is interfering with the way we perceive that the way it should be, then we are not happy about that. And one of the things that I always say is that empathy goes at an enormous length. So if you think about yourself and how strongly you feel about something and are passionate about whatever it is that you're getting frustrated about, and if the other person is fighting just as hard for their perspective, then taking a step back and trying to view the situation from all sides can go a long way in attempting to show the other person that you're making an effort. We'll get more into that in a little bit. So there are 6 basic causes of conflict. The first is control of resources, and this is a really broad issue, and it can be everything from small cases of controlling of resources, from like if you grew up with in a big family and say mom bought a package of the really good granola bars, like the chocolate covered granola bars, and there was enough for everyone to have one, and maybe there was going to be one left over, and there was always that like mad rush for who's going to get that extra good granola bar, and then you were really looking forward to it, you thought you were going to get it, and you walk in just as your brother's swiping it out of the cabinet, and you get angry and you start yelling and screaming that that one was yours or whatever, or maybe he's even eating yours, so you haven't even had one yet, and you're flipping out. Right there is control of resources. There is something that you want, they want it too, and you're fighting over it. But it also goes to huge issues. The majority of the wars that have been fought have been over control of resources. You know, in the Middle East, long ago, it was over control of oil and resources that way. There's been over control, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on words here. When we're talking about the earth and resources that way, and global warming and stuff, and protecting resources, all of these things fall under that category. The next is preferences and nuisances. These are those things that just bug us when we prefer it to be done a certain way and they're not doing it right. Values, beliefs, and goals. These are often things that if somebody is questioning what you believe in, what you value, if somebody is hindering you from accomplishing your goals, this can be big sources of conflict. And then the last one is just the nature of the relationship. Some people, some friendships, some partnerships, relationships just have that natural interaction where it always seems like you're just at conflict with each other, where you just bicker all the time. And for some relationships, that's just the nature of the way they interact with each other. So even though we tend to think of conflict as bad and how it's something that should be avoided, there's also some upside to conflict, and it can actually have positive outcomes. So what if you learn how to handle conflict in a healthy way, how to communicate through conflict, what that can do for your relationship is it can actually help strengthen your relationship because it teaches you that you are partners looking for the same goals. So even when you disagree, you're both putting your relationship first and you're willing to navigate through that conflict to come up with a resolution that works for both of you. And that can actually help strengthen your relationship because it's evidence and proof that you're on the same page, that you both want the same thing in the end, even when you're disagreeing. So, some of the positive effects is it promotes growth in the relationship. If you learn how to communicate in a healthy way, it allows for a healthy release of feelings. So, this is where you don't go into personal attacks. You're not calling names, you're not belittling. But when you're able to communicate and express yourself and you feel safe in your ability to express what's bothering you, and the other person is willing to listen and hear what it is that is bothering you, it can actually open up the communication, and you can actually feel like this relief and this release in what you need to get off your chest. It increases your motivation and self-esteem. When you're working together, you want to be better and to improve, and it allows you to feel empowered. So there are negative effects to conflict, obviously, and it's mostly when you don't know how to fight or have conflict in a healthy way. So, what happens is so often when you go into conflict, you have this mindset of there's got to be a winner and a loser. And something I always point out to my students is that if you're going into conflict with the idea of, I'm going to be the winner, I'm going to be the one that wins this argument, then what you're ultimately saying is that I want my partner to be a loser. And if I were to ask you, hey, do you want to be in a relationship with a loser? You'd probably look at me like I was crazy. Of course, I don't want to be in a relationship with a loser. But when you're in a conflict situation, that's ultimately what you're doing. You want them to be the loser so you can be the winner. And so it sounds ridiculous when I put it that way, that if I asked you, hey, is your partner a loser? No, absolutely not. Or you wouldn't want that. But when you're fighting, that's the first thing you want to do. So if you tend to approach conflict that way, then it's time to oftentimes do some self-reflection. Is what makes it so that when I'm angry, when I'm upset, that I want to just win, that I have to have the last word, the last say. It can also cause resentments, and something that a lot of people do too is if they don't like conflict is they'll avoid it. And when you avoid it, it's not like it goes away. It just sits there under the surface. So what so often happens with people that avoid conflict is that it piles up, piles up, piles up. So someday something little might happen and you might just explode and you just act totally irrational and out of proportion with what the issue is, then it needs to be. And the problem with that is that you're never really dealing with what the real issue is. You're like more overreacting to surface level issues, and that can cause long-term relationship damage. So there tends to be three ways that people tend to be responsive in. You can be a combo of some of these, or it might depend on the person. So maybe when it's with your family, you're one way, but when you're with your friends or a significant other, you're one way else. But one of these is likely to stand out to you as one that you're most often the way you respond to conflict. So the first is the passive or non-assertive style. And this is the person that avoids conflict. They want to keep the peace. They just want everything to be left alone. Everything's fine. So they'll either try to pretend everything's great. So somebody's starting an argument with them and they'll just be like, oh, everything's fine. Let's just forget about this. And they brush it off, or they change the subject. Sometimes they even leave the situation if the other person keeps going, because their goal is to just avoid the conversation or avoid the issue at all costs. They just want to keep the peace. And in doing so, they can oftentimes put their own needs and desires last, and they can oftentimes be taking advantage of this because people know that they're not going to push the issue. The next is the aggressive style, and this is like the polar opposite of the passive. The aggressive style is the ones that want all the attention on them. They want to have control of the situation. They're going to be the ones, like if you've ever gone to a bar or something on Chippewa, and they're the obnoxious person that you can hear across the bar, like, "Hey, what are you looking at? Come here, you want to," and they try to make themselves appear physically bigger than they are. They try to make themselves sound threatening. They're the ones that are going to be loud and obnoxious. They want the attention on them. They want to win. They don't really care if they bring the other person down in the process. It's all about being in control and having having the dominance of that relationship. Then you've got the assertive style, and the assertive style is the ideal style. This is what we all should be working towards, because in an assertive style, you are confident, you're standing up for yourself, but you're not going to get taken advantage of, you're not going to be walked on, but you also do it in such a way that you're respectful and you're mindful of other people's beliefs, ideas, opinions, convictions, and you're willing to look at things from other sides. And because of this, you're willing to sometimes compromise, you're willing to admit when you're wrong. And so the thing with the assertive style is you don't get taken advantage of, but people also don't tend to get angry with you or upset with you because you do so in such a manner that there's respect on both fronts. Okay, so now to the next section. So if going over those three styles, obviously assertiveness is the ideal situation, but it doesn't necessarily come easily for a lot of people. And there are actually classes and trainings you can take that are called assertiveness trainings. And this is something you can work on even without having officially meeting with somebody. So there's basic assertion, and you can use this just if you're one of the type of people that, so maybe when you're talking, people just talk over you, they interrupt you. So basic assertion is just gently standing up for yourself. So being able to say, "Oh, excuse me, let me finish, please." Or, "Oh, I was talking, I'll be done in just a second." Or, "Excuse me, I'd like to finish." Something that is reminding the person in a kind way that you are there, that you can't be walked on and taken advantage of. Excuse me. The next one is expressing positive feelings. So for a lot of people, they struggle to accept or express forms of compliments. So if you are the type of person where somebody says, "Oh, I really like that shirt on you, it looks great," and your response is, "Oh, really? This thing? Oh, I got it off the Target clearance rack, it was only $5," or "Oh, I've had this thing for years, I can't believe you like it," where you always try to kind of placate compliments, then being able to say a simple "thank you" or "I appreciate that," being able to accept compliments and being able to express them when you feel it is a big part of assertion. And lastly is the escalating assertion. And this is when somebody keeps pushing you. So maybe they've interrupted you and you've said, "Can you please, I'm sorry, I'd like to finish," or, "Excuse me, I'm not done yet." And you keep saying it. Well, this is now where you have to kind of step up the game. So, you might have to say, "This is the third time I've asked. I'd really like to finish what I'm saying here." And you're a little bit more firm. You use facts and you don't say, "You're hurting my feelings," or, but using facts and staying focused. The iMessage is an amazing tool, and if we were in class in person, I would really drill this in and we would practice it and such, and I hope you'll take advantage and practice this too, even with somebody in your life. And I have, crossed my heart, I've had students come to me and tell me after we have gone over this in class, I used this with my significant other this weekend and it really did work. And, students will laugh at me when I tell them that this can literally change how you, excuse me, how you engage or face conflict with somebody in your life. But it really does work. So what the iMessage is it's a 4-step process of facing conflict with somebody else. So the first step is objective, non-judgmental description of the problem. So maybe your roommate keeps leaving dirty dishes in the sink, and you'll clean it up, and then the next time they eat, they just throw their dirty dishes, and this is starting to be a problem for you. So the objective, non-judgmental. So you're not going to say, why are you a complete slob and you can't wash your own dishes? Because now you're getting name calling in there. Now you're getting, you're judging. So instead, just focusing on the facts. So when you put or after you eat anything, you put your dirty dishes in the sink. How do I feel about this is the step 2. Well, maybe I feel frustrated and angry because I'm having to do your dishes then, or leave them sitting there, which attracts bugs. So the concrete effects on me is I then have to wash your dishes, or I have to deal with bugs in my kitchen because the dirty dishes are sitting there so long. And then the biggest part, and this is what people oftentimes in any sort of conflict that they forget about, is the request or an invitation to respond. So often in an argument, we'll be angry and we'll tell somebody, things like, you never do any of the dishes around here. I do them all. Or I'm the only one that ever picks up the dog poop in the yard, or things like this. But we never say what it is we want done instead. We'll complain about what the person is doing or isn't doing, but we don't tell them what it is we wish they were doing or that we want them to do. So in this situation, I would say something, and I'm going to go through the 4-step process. So I would say something like, every time you have eaten a meal the last couple weeks, you put your dirty dishes right in the sink and you don't wash them. This makes me feel really angry and frustrated because then I either have to clean up after you or they sit there and attract bugs. I really wish that you would start just washing your dishes as soon as you were done using them. So that big part is the request for an invitation to respond. I'm telling them what I need them to do. Because a lot of times we expect people to, and this is going through everything, we expect people to be a mind reader, and we'll complain about things that they're doing, but then we don't tell them what it is we wish they were doing instead. And so they might make little changes or do something different, and we might not even realize it because it's not what we need them to be doing. This happens a lot in relationships, is that you'll complain, they'll change something up, you still complain, and they say, see, I can never win. You asked me, to stop leaving my dirty dishes in the sink, so I started stacking them on the counter, and that's still not good enough for you. Well, no, because what you want them to do is stop leaving their dirty dishes altogether, like wash the dirty dishes. But if you don't express that, then it's easy to understand how sometimes, this is an easy example, but so oftentimes, they'll make changes or attempt to do something different, and it's still not making us happy, but we never told them what it is we want them to do. So in order to do this in a successful way, is it doesn't necessarily come naturally to most people. This isn't how you would necessarily talk. So practice it. And I know it sounds ridiculous, practicing a conversation. And I swear this is what I've had so many students come to me in the past saying, okay, I listened to what you had to say. I gave it a try. I wrote it all out, and it actually worked. We actually made some headway in this argument we've been having for years. So write it out, practice it, practice that assertive body language, that standing tall, that maintaining eye contact, not looking down, not shrinking into yourself so that you look, weaker, out of control of the situation. And don't be sidetracked or manipulated, stay focused. And being able to say no is part of assertiveness, and that is one of the videos that I have for you to watch. So please watch this video, Just Say No. It's really good on teaching you how to just say no. And then the last section is conflict resolution. And there are different strategies for handling conflict. So there's the avoiding strategy, which is considered a lose-lose for both people in the conflict, because this is where the conflict isn't really getting dealt with. You're just, neither one wants to deal with it. You're just kind of letting it go. You're pretending it doesn't exist. But the problem is like I said before, is that it's going to resurface down the road. It's going to explode. It's going to come up. And so neither people are getting any sort of resolution from this strategy. The next one is the accommodating strategy, and this is considered a lose-win situation, because this is where one party in the conflict is always making compromises. They're giving in. They tend to believe, like, okay, just do whatever it takes to keep the peace. We want to have harmony. We want everything to be okay. So I'll just sacrifice. I'll compromise this time. And so, because of that, one person is always winning. They're getting what they need from the situation, and the other person is always the one making the sacrifices, making the the compromises. The next one is the competing forcing strategy, and this is either considered a win-lose or a lose-lose. And this is where you're so focused on winning, on getting what you need, that you're willing to walk over the needs of other people. You're willing to overlook the needs of the other person in the conflict situation. So your goal is that you're just gonna get what you need from it. I don't care if they're the ones always having to sacrifice whatever. So it can be considered a win-lose, because yes, you tend to end up getting what you want, but ultimately it's a lose-lose situation, because your partner is the one that's always having to sacrifice in order for you to get what you want, and ultimately that's going to cause larger problems. Now, the compromising strategy is labeled as one of those partial lose-lose. I'm a glass half full type of girl, so I tend to think of it as a partial win-win. And the reason for that is, in a compromising strategy, it's where both people care enough about the other person that they want there to be some satisfaction on both ends. So both people are going to communicate well. Each person is going to compromise to some degree and give in some concessions on their part. So that way both parties are walking away getting some of what they want out of the situation, even though neither one is necessarily getting everything that they want. And lastly is the collaborating strategy. And honestly, this is considered a win-win for both people, but I'm going to be honest with you in that it takes a lot of work to truly collaborate with somebody. And so this is going to be somebody that you are really, or a situation that you're really committed to, because what you do is you hash it out, you collaborate, you rework things, you look at it from different angles, you put a lot of time and effort and energy into coming up with a plan that makes it so that both people are fully satisfied with the end result. And so it's considered an absolute win-win, because both people care very much for the overall piece of the situation. But I'm going to be honest in that, just realistically, most people in day-to-day conflict do not have the time and energy to put forth in using the collaborating strategy in everyday conflict situations. That's where that other video comes into play. So please, going back to those, please watch these 3. It's going to provide a lot more of the examples, seeing it in action on how to resolve conflict. And this is a really, really important topic, and strategies and tools for you to have and use in your relationship. So I really hope you'll put forth the extra time and energy this week to really digging into this information, especially when it comes to the homework assignment. Okay, have a wonderful week. I will see you guys all on Friday.